Hi, everyone. This is a lecture on Chapter 7. Now, Chapter 7 has several pieces to it, and we're going to split this up into several different videos. That way, the videos are a little bit shorter, and you can watch the videos as you need to. If you need to go back and take a look at them again, it's a lot easier to do that instead of fast forwarding and rewinding. But this first video we're going to talk about is about creating views and how to use those views. So let's go ahead and jump in and get started on that. So let's talk about a view and what a view is. A view is a program's or individual's picture of the database. So a view is a query that is ran when it's executed to create the results. It's easily to use, it's quick, you save it, it's all that good stuff. What it is it's a query on base tables. Now, base tables are the existing permanent tables in a relational database, where a view is not actually a table. And so, please understand when you're creating views, you're not creating like this subtable or something like that. It's not the case. You are creating just a query that, when executed, does that query, pulls the data up, and shows it into a view. So view is a derived table because data in it is retrieved from the base table. Derived is different than a permanent table. We're going to hide that. There we go. All right. So when creating and using views, usually includes less information than full databases. It simplifies the data for users. It also is a way to create some security around your data. Oftentimes, you don't want an end user to see all the data you've stored in a database. For example, let's talk about payroll. Right? Maybe you want to be able to give users a way to see a contact list. So, the employee's name, their phone number, their address, but you don't want to put in there what they make because maybe not everyone should have access to that view. So by creating a view that only shows the name and the address and important information like that for contact information, you can exclude the payroll information and have a way to create some security, because you can tell the database that users can look at this view, but they can't look at the underlying tables. So that's just one way of doing some security, one reason to use views. Another reason to use views is you want to simplify the data. Oftentimes, tables have a lot of data that is just not relevant to whatever process is needed. And giving all that data to a user can oftentimes complicate and muddy the situation. So we create views all the time for data. Creating it and using a view is pretty straightforward. In this illustration, you can see we're creating a view called toys as, and then the query. It's pretty simple. That's as simple as it gets. So, creating and using views. Now, one of the things that I want to point out is I want you to pay attention to this a little bit more, because we're going to show you some views. We're going to show you how to use some views, but we're also going to show you what your query on a view, what the actual SQL behind the scenes looks like. And that's pretty important because you're going to need that definitely for the homework. It's also helpful to know what you're doing when you're creating these views and then executing queries on them. So on this, we had talked about the create view toys, and we specified the very specific columns we want from the table where category is toy. And as you can see, that is our table. Now, why didn't we put the type in there? Well, probably because this is only going to be one type, and so why add that information? You could if you wanted to, but it seems a little redundant. So oftentimes in views, we try to remove redundant data. All right. So what we can see is what this table is showing you is we're pulling this grayed out information together into this view. Makes sense. So now we can say select star from toys where price is greater than 100. When we do that, we get this nice nifty response, which is just, again, this table, but now we're saying, hey, give me these give me these 4 records because this one's less than $100. So we should have 4 records here, and we do. It's pretty simple. Now, when you're creating and using those views and you've created that query, remember your view is a query as well as you've now just created a query on top of that view or on top of that query. So all that information gets put together into a new query when you run that. And this is what that query looks like. So again, and the way I usually do it is I start with the beginning query, which is the select item, num description, on hand, price from item where category equals toy. And then we add our next piece to it where price is greater than 100. And so you're going to see that select item number, description, on hand, price from item where category equals toy. And this is the big piece. This is that piece we just added. Price is greater than 100. This is the query that's now being derived and executed behind the scenes. So create view, we can also rename columns. So create view TYS, and this is the name of the columns as select item number, description, on hand, and price. So again, they're just shortening these columns mainly to show you an example of how to do that and why you might do that. Oftentimes, it's just the opposite, by the way. Oftentimes, our column names are somewhat cryptic. And in a view, we want to make them look nicer because, again, oftentimes end users are using views rather than the tables themselves. So oftentimes, it's just the opposite. We're actually making the columns of the view much more friendly to read. You can also create views. Defining query views can be any valid SQL query, which includes joins. You can create joins to bring data together into one table. This is pretty common in the SQL world for the fact that, again, we tend to have our data spread across all these tables, and we want our client just to be able to see, or the end user, we just want to see us kind of put together a report of data. So oftentimes we will use joins. And so here we got the select rep number, their last name and first name, customer number, customer name, from the rep table and the customer table, where the rep number equals the customer's rep number as well, order by rep number and customer number. Again, we can use these orders because they would then go ahead and execute on the data to make the view. And it's now going to be a part of the view. So this view will always be in order of rep number and then customer number. We can also include some statistics. So we can start to say select credit limit count from customers, group by credit limit, and order by credit limit. So when you're creating views, and again, oftentimes when you're making a view that might be somewhat report driven, you want to show some report data, or just creating, I have a team of developers that are always working, and they'll create views when it's very specific to something in one of our applications. Hey, this is going to be a quick data dump to our application. They'll create a view that has all the statistics. It makes it real simple when the application then makes use of that view. So, creating and using views. The benefits of views: provide data independence, can often be used even after database structure changes. What they're trying to say here is your database is oftentimes somewhat fluid. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. It depends on how big your database is, what kind of business you run. But for the sake of data, we can say that our database is always evolving and growing, right? We add data, we may move data around. What's nice about that is you can create views on top of data. Now, the underlying data may change, and if it changes in a certain manner, you might have to update your view, but what you're doing is you're kind of black boxing the underlying tables and making this one view. So as you move data down here in this lower plane, you make the small modifications to your view. So for the end user, nothing has changed for them. Let's say you have a column in table A, you've now moved that to table B. You just make a quick change in your view, and the client or the end user is not aware whatsoever. Again, great for applications. A lot of times we have applications we want to pull data from views because we know that the function of that view is going to always remain the same through the life of the application. However, we know the data below it may ebb and flow. And so all we have to do is change the view to point to the right tables rather than have to go back into the application and make it look at the right tables. It's just a very convenient way to do that. Different users can view same data differently. Again, if you're someone that needs to get contact information from the payroll system versus someone that needs to approve financials, same data but different views, and you can change things around. You can do aggregates on data and all these kind of things on the data that might be different per your end user. A view can contain only those columns required by a given user. So it simplifies the user's perspective of the database. Again, our databases are oftentimes very cryptic and complicated. We can make a view that just has what they need in it. It kind of goes back to that provide data independence, but it's a slightly different in the fact that, again, we're trying to limit the confusion and how much data we give someone. Oftentimes, one thing to keep in mind is when you're talking about data, you are either data dumping or you're reporting. Reports are something that's somewhat small and you can make actual decisions from them, where a data dump is oftentimes a lot of data that you have to do something with before you can make a decision on it. So views give us a real nice way to make sure that we're giving some very specialized requirements for a given user. Using a view to update data. Now, I want to take a moment and pause on this because this is where people start getting in trouble. If your view is very simple and it has certain key features, then yes, you can use a view to update data all day long. What I will tell you is most views are not simple and they're not based on certain criteria and make updating data difficult. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that so I can give you some thought process to that and what that means. So when you're updating row, column, subset views, you can update usually if the view contains the primary key. And you can already see where it's saying usually, right? Because there are weird times where usually means no, it won't work for you. But you can if it has a primary key. If it doesn't have a primary key, nope, can't update it. This is a good example. Select star from rep cred. This is just not a good view at all because, and that's not true. It might be a great view because, again, if all you care about is this information, then that's all you care about. But the rep number in this obviously is not the primary key, and so because they're telling you it's not the primary key, so we can't update this. For example, 15 and 15, here it is, duplicated. So if I say update this view and change 15's credit limit to something else, it's going to start updating multiple records. Not good. It won't know which record to update. So the answer to this question, if you were to be asked in homework, why this query wouldn't work is because there's no primary key, in which case to indicate which specific row in the underlying data should truly be updated. When you're updating views and involving joins, I'm just going to tell you, it gets messy real fast. So you can update when a view is derived by joining two tables on the primary key of each table. So again, if you've got a primary key in both tables and you're using those primary keys to join data together, you can easily use this to update views, update the data below it by updating the view, because it will know which row in each table to update. If you update a view, if you create a view involving joins by matching the primary key of one table with the column that is not the primary key, you can't update the data because it'll know what data update in one table but not the other table. It just won't know. And usually when you do this, it's because you want one row of data with one table and multiple rows of data from another table. So again, it just won't know which of the table with the multiple data is to update. So you're going to encounter more severe problems if neither of the joined columns is a primary key. And that's just one of those things that you got to get used to is if you've got a join that has no primary key in it, you're not going to be able to update. It won't know which rows to update. Updating views that include statistics. This is the most difficult to update, and the reason being is statistics are aggregations or aggregates of data, right? So you can't update the sum of a view. Like, let's say you have a view of 10 rows, and then you sum those rows together. Maybe it's you're trying to find out the total sales of a customer rep, right? You're going to aggregate that data. You're going to have then what comes out to be one row with a sum on the end. Well, you can't change the sum because the underlying data is what's creating the sum. So you can't update the sum, right? It just doesn't work that way. You cannot add rows to a view that include calculations. Again, the view itself just doesn't know how to handle that. And try to imagine, try to put those queries together. Try to put the original view query that you have that has these calculations, and then try to put that update, put those together and see if you could make it work, and it just won't. And that's why the view won't work. All right, this is the last slide of this particular section, and this is how to drop a view. We're going to go through this. You're going to see this multiple times on different things, whether it be stored procedures, triggers, constraints. Dropping is pretty simple, and it's pretty standard across the board. So to drop a view, you're going to remove a view that is no longer needed with the drop view command. The drop view command removes only the view definition. The base table and the data remains unchanged. So you'll say drop view and the name of the actual drop view, or the view that you want to drop. Excuse me. So drop view and then the name. All right, that is this for this particular video. We will next be talking about some security. Thanks.